Hello, welcome back to the Evergreen RX. I'm your host, Hayden, licensed mental health therapist, Cancer Moon, and the first to get deep at any party. And that whole licensed mental health therapist part is going to be a little bit more relevant for what we're talking about today. And also for those of you watching, hello, welcome to a different setup. I'm not sure if this is going to be my new filming setup or not, but I just want to be really comfy on the couch, and I was never as comfortable as I wanted to be in my old location, so I'm trying this out. Let me know what you guys think. I want it to feel a little bit more relaxed, especially for these mini doses and such. So today I am going to be answering the question, should I go to therapy? And so this is why I said the whole licensed mental health therapist thing is a little bit more relevant for today's episode, because my answer might kind of surprise you. And if you already saw the title of this, you've seen that my TLDR, my short answer, is maybe not. So I kind of wanted to talk about this today just to have the conversation that it doesn't seem like a lot of people are having, or maybe some people are kind of scared to have. I'm not even scared. I don't want to project on others, but kind of just the movement in recent history has been towards, pro mental health, pro therapy, and that obviously is amazing, and I wouldn't want that to change. And I think it's really helped destigmatize therapy for people and make it a lot more mainstream. Even when I was in high school, I would go to therapy during school. That was the only time my therapist was available. I would go during my lunch break, but I had to leave class a little bit early to be able to get there in time. And I would tell friends that I was going to a doctor's appointment. I don't know. They thought, they probably knew I was going to therapy or thought I had a terminal illness because I was going every week. And so a lot has changed since then, where I can't even fathom why I wouldn't have told my friends I was going to therapy. But it just wasn't as common, and that wasn't even too long ago. So obviously, on the whole, this is great. I would love to dive a little bit deeper than the surface level on this idea of kind of everybody being pro therapy, going to therapy. It's kind of the big advice we always hear nowadays. People will be like, they need to get into therapy, or have you tried therapy, or whatever. And I think that there's more nuance to it than that. And there's also certain life situations or personalities, not even personalities, but maybe just where somebody's at, where therapy might not be the best investment of their time and money. Because I think, as with all things, when something becomes a little bit more mainstream, it can get a little bit watered down as well. So with the mental health therapy movement, it can start to become a little bit more cliched, or maybe too generalized to really preserve its true nature. And what I believe the true nature of therapy really is it's deep work. It can be deep work and hard work. Ideally, really progressing you forward and getting to a place where you maybe are ready to stop therapy or to take a break. I mean, I'm you can always come back to it, but it's a very specific kind of transformative process, and I think we've lost the plot on that a little bit. So anyway, I'm already starting to answer the question, but yeah, my spoiler alert is I don't think everybody should be in therapy. So I'm gonna go a little bit over the reasons kind of for and against therapy, probably focusing a little bit more on the against, just because I think that's the part that we don't hear about as much, and I don't want to just repeat all of the great reasons you should go to therapy, because I think most people listening to this podcast already understand that. And also, if you're already in therapy and you're maybe wondering if it's time to take a break, or you're wanting to like analyze whether the guy that you're starting to see is like really doing the work in therapy or just kind of going because that's what he thinks he should do. I'm just kidding, but kind of. I'm think this will be helpful as well because I'm in my own kind of stage in life right now where I'm, questioning my own relationship to my personal therapy, my therapist that I've been working with for so long that I've literally nothing but good things to say about. But, it's just I'm in a new life phase and transition and I'm putting a lot of personal growth work in other ways as well. And so it's kind of one of those evaluation periods of like, what am I wanting from this? What am I getting from it? And am I able to give as much to it as it kind of deserves to be the most beneficial? So, yeah, the first point is kind of like not all therapy is created equal. And not all therapists are the same. And I mean by that in caliber of skill, but also in approach and perspective on healing and what therapy is meant to be. And not to say that the differences are bad, although sometimes they are. Sometimes people are not as qualified as we would hope to be able to really facilitate the kind of growth and transformation that we would want therapy to entail. And so it's kind of looking at it from all of those angles, especially like for yourself. If you're kind of asking this question of yourself of should I be going or should I continue going or whatever, yeah, really kind of looking from all these different angles. Like, one easy example I have is like the format of the type of therapy. So that means like in person or virtual or, texting based, which I'll get into later. Some people, virtual works fine. Some people, I truly believe like they can do it. It's kind of just suits their life, whatever. For a lot of people, I would say that the work becomes slightly more tangible and visceral and like real when we commit our time and our energy to it by driving to the office and, building in that commuting time and like being in your car thinking about it on the way there and thinking about it on the way back. And, that can add to a level of like rawness or realness that sometimes is really conducive to therapy. And I'm not, I feel nervous talking about this because it's like, well, I know it's very accessible when there's virtual, and I see clients virtually, so I'm not shitting on it, but that is a level if you're kind of really wanting to get serious and really put in the work that therapy kind of requires, then, considering what format you're going in. And are you doing virtual because you really have to do that? It's the only time you have available? Or is it because there's it feels like a step too much of commitment to go in person? And that's something I would question because there are so many ways that we can go to therapy and not actually be really putting the work in. And there's ways that we can create distance even when we're in it. And one of the ways we can create that distance is through going virtually or just doing it over the phone. And, in a couple weeks, I'm planning on having an episode talking about kind of like how to get past defenses in therapy, like how to open up more and like be more vulnerable and let some of those guards down. So I'll touch on some of this in more detail because I think it is a very complex issue. But these are things to really consider when you're thinking about starting therapy, because if you're finding like the commitment to driving there isn't too strong, or even to, there's even some wishy-washy commitment on going virtually, and how much you're willing to really put in time wise, monetarily, what you're able to contribute. If some of those things are like you're really hesitant, I don't know if therapy is going to be the most beneficial kind of first step, because you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. And you can go to therapy and your therapist can be wonderful and skilled and all of that. And if the internal dedication and commitment to diving in isn't there 100%, or even 80%, 70%, 60%, it's going to be challenging. It is going to be challenging to really get the full benefit out of it. So it kind of does, I'm already touching on really my second and main point that I wanted to get to, which is like that my biggest question or consideration is your personal readiness. When I have like consult calls with clients, which is basically the 15 minutes 20-minute call that you have with somebody before scheduling with them, to just see goodness of fit and what they wanting to work on, one of the things I'm listening for is the readiness that I'm sensing from them, the willingness to be open, to be curious, to try new things, determination to like really see change. When people are like, I'm so fed up with this, I don't want to deal with this anymore, blah blah blah, like sometimes that is a really good sign to me. I'm like, okay, they're ready to like get in and do what it takes. And so some questions you can kind of consider is, have you already thought about some of the issues that you're bumping up against? Have you already like pondered on them? Have you started to maybe notice patterns or some experience from your past that seems to be coming up and affecting you today? Like, are you starting to get a grasp for yourself? And this is not 100% prerequisite. Sometimes people come in and they have no clue and they've never been taught to think about things in that way. They've never really been taught on how to identify their emotions, and they can get so much out of therapy, 100%. Like, it is not a prerequisite, but it's one of the questions to ponder. It's like, do I know what I want to work on and what's kind of causing me issues? And do I have some of that awareness kind of already on board? And I also think, do you feel open to exploring creative solutions? Are you curious about wanting to know yourself on a deeper level? Are you ready to allow and receive? That's one of the big things in therapy is you're going to go in there and like the therapist is in a large way kind of responsible for the space and for holding things and directing the time and creating those like safe boundaries in that like holding space. And so that means that your challenge might be allowing someone else to kind of have that handle on the situation and kind of be in that leadership guiding role. If you're really used to being in that in your own life, are you ready for someone else to step into that position and to allow you to receive, allow you to be taken care of, to receive support, to receive love and kindness, and somebody really directing their attention to you, which can be very uncomfortable. So starting to ask yourself some of these questions. And if you find that the answer is no to a lot of these questions, my thing would be try some other things first, because therapy is expensive. And so try some other things out, like journaling, meditating, starting to become like mindfully aware of yourself and kind of what is going on inside of you, just feelings wise. Like that can mean physical sensations inside of you. What is anxiety? Maybe you struggle with anxiety. What is it like? Actually, what is that experience like for you? There's ways to start getting curious with that stuff before you ever step foot into a therapist office. And, you can read books, reading self-help books. I think this is a super great gateway. Listening to podcasts, spending some time in like curious self-reflection. These can be steps that you take that just kind of prime the pump. So when you are ready for therapy, or maybe some of those resistances subside, you're able to just jump in and start getting the most value right from the beginning, because that's ideally what we want, is for, your time and your money to be really going the going the extra mile. And I know there can be a lot of social pressure nowadays around getting into therapy, and sometimes in certain circles it can be kind of taboo if you're not. But if you genuinely ask yourself these questions and you don't feel like you're ready yet, be gentle with yourself. It's okay. It's a very vulnerable thing to do, and maybe try some of these other avenues to see if, you start learning more about yourself or start getting more curious about your experience, that, it might start to move the needle on how ready you feel to go in and really talk to somebody else about what's going on for you. Also, it's okay to want to go to therapy for social support, but that's just like a different type of therapy, in my opinion. And this might be something that gets people a little bit upset, but this really was kind of one of the catalysts for talking about this question, because I do think that there are people that their main priority in going to therapy is just a listening ear, someone to be there, and to be able to vent and get things off their chest and just feel like someone cares. And that is fine. That is great. And there are times where that's exactly what all of us need from our therapist. But if that's kind of the primary thing you're going in for, and it's week after week, and it's really just not kind of moving past that level of just validation and support, that's your prerogative. That's fine. But I almost feel like socially we should have like a different name or like job title for that type of work. And this is when I really get into personal opinion. And I hear this from other therapist friends and stuff too, but ideally what we want is there should be some challenge in therapy. There should be some growth edges that are being pushed. And this brings me to my point for any of you people out there that say that you love therapy. You might not be being challenged enough. And not to say you can't love your therapist and be super happy and grateful you're in therapy. That's how I feel. Like, I'm very grateful. I'm very happy to be in therapy. I love my therapist. There's all of these wonderful things. But if you're like walking away being like, that was awesome, I felt great, I look forward to therapy and it just feels awesome, maybe we're not being challenged enough, because it should be a little bit tough. Like, in that feeling of like, wow, I just did something. It's like when you go on a run, it's like, wow, that was hard, but I did it. Like, I feel accomplished. You don't want to be dreading going to therapy, but it's a little bit of that, oh, that was hard but good feeling. And if it's just easy and good, maybe a little more challenge is good. And if you're noticing that's you, then, and you want to change it, you can spend some time maybe reflecting before you go into the session. Really think about what you want to focus on. Observing throughout the week what's coming up for you. Inviting your therapist to challenge you more. Ooh, that's so awesome. I love when people do that. They say, you could really I really want to be challenged, or don't sugarcoat things. I want to just kind of hear things as they are. I'm like, okay, we can do that. We'll see how it goes. So you can always invite the therapist into, that goal of yours as well. And lastly, because I said I was going to touch on it, just a word of warning on some of the really popular text-based online therapy platforms that do a lot of influencer ads, and you've probably heard of them. I'm not going to name them. I don't want to be sued, but I would caution on kind of proceeding using those platforms, just because I've heard a lot of horror stories, and I personally have never met a person that works for one of these platforms, and I know a lot of therapists. So just something to think about, because when we're thinking about formatting, kind of setting yourself up for success, I think that the way that those platforms are structured at times doesn't lend itself to a real depth of work. You know, this idea that you should just be able to text your therapist 24/7 and receive a response, and that's like quote unquote therapy, feels a little bit slippery to me. And not what I would call traditionally therapy, which maybe I'm old school and whatever, and that's like, but I would say I've heard some horror stories about sites like that. So just a word of warning for you gals and guys and anybody listening. But yeah, that's all I got. It was a little stream of consciousness, but I've got a lot of thoughts on this, obviously, and I would love to hear more questions and your thoughts and what you're wondering, especially in the therapy space, because while this isn't, a solely therapist podcast, it is a large part of my life and my identity, and I do like to talk about it. So let me know, and in a couple weeks I'll be circling back around with an episode about getting past your defenses. So stay tuned for that. And until next time, I hope you take wonderful care of yourself. And please keep up with me on TikTok, Instagram. I would love to connect with you. All right. Bye.